Yo, it's Guido coming at you with a review. We have a new Italian TD line, and unlike a lot of the lines in the recent past, it goes down to Tier 5 when it starts. So many years ago, children, when the game started, we would get lines that would start from Tier 1. A lot of times. At least Tier 2. But anyway, this one starts at Tier 5, and it is Italian TD line. Now, this is an interesting one we're going to review, Tier 5. I don't do a whole lot of Tier 5 reviews for the aforementioned reason right there. And plus, I don't play a lot of Tier 5, but I will say I actually like this game down at low tiers as well. I don't go down there a whole lot because I'm a pretty good player, and it feels a little bit, or maybe it is, seal clubbing, that kind of stuff. But really, there's no reason to not like the game at Tier 5. It's kind of fun. Anyway, let's check this out with the Semovente M41. This is an interesting tank to me because it's a tank that was actually built. There was a little over 200 models made on this thing. It was actually divisional artillery more so than an SPG or a anti-tank gun, although it was used in that role. And looking at the Wikipedia and some other sources, it's actually one of the few Italian pieces of equipment that the Allies actually feared because it was quite powerful. The version that was in World War II is using the actual stock gun, the Cannon 75/18, from what I can tell. And like a lot of the world of tanks, when you do the upgrades, it goes into a little bit of fantasy land, or planned upgrades that never happened, or examples of guns that were thought about but never put in, that kind of stuff. So there's your small history lesson on the M41. Don't quote me on any of that. It's possible I just made some of it up. It's kind of a Stug idea. That's what's mentioned. Kind of a Stug idea. So we are going to take a look at it against the Stug. Here it is. Very low silhouette kind of tank. Very flat armor, except that upper plate that's angled, but that's just by coincidence, really, more than anything. Everything's flat. There's not a whole lot of armor on this thing. Let's take a quick look and a comparison amongst some of its peers in terms of casemate tanks that are very recognizable in the game, the Stug 3 and the Su-85. The thing that jumped out at me immediately with this tank is its DPM is pretty darn good at 2295, so quite a bit higher than the other two. But let's jump back up here because the average damage is lower and the penetration is worse. We'll look at the gold round in just a second, but it's standard round, so it struggles a little bit with penetration in terms of a TD. You can solve that by pressing 2 and firing some heat with the resulting heat issues that the heat has. But man, it can spit some rounds downrange big time. And this is the top configuration for all of these tanks right here. So rate of fire is quite high, 2.88 seconds. It's just pew, pew, pew coming at you. -8 on the gun depression is very comfortable. The gun traverse is quite a bit. Actually, 16 degrees is not bad. So you can track quite a ways across without moving the hull, which is always an issue with the casemate TD in the game. Dispersion's not great though. I did a little bit to tame that. 0.37 is considerably worse than the more sniper-esque Stug 3 and Su-85 guns. So that will be a bit of a pain for you. Armor, as I said, is virtually nothing. The Stug is actually pretty decently armored in this game. This thing is not great. The Su at least has some angles. Again, back to the flat plate action of the Semovente M41 going on there. I actually ran a turbo, but it does have a 35 top speed, which is slower than both these fellers right here. The turbo, and I will get to my setup in just a second, the turbo made me feel like it was sprightly enough to kind of move around and get it done. But at 35, goodness gracious, that is a sluggard in terms of this game. So, you know, it's way to load limit. Although it's way to load limit. Why is that? Oh, it's a better percentage. What am I looking at? I don't know. I'll have to go back to that. Why is it showing the best? It's lowest weight. It's the lowest weight. I guess it wins because it's light. I didn't realize that's how that particular... its load limit's 14.5, which is actually not good. That's why it's not very fast. Because look at its horsepower. Terrible. 250 horse. I can't get over that. I didn't realize it gave the win to the lightest tank. Or is it maybe the best? It can't be the best percentage because the load limit's horrible. All right. Don't you like it when I learn things as I'm doing a video and then I don't edit it, because why would I? The camo is actually pretty decent at 26 stationary and 15 while firing. And the view range is 350, which is, it's covered up by my little icon right there, but it's 310 on the Stug and 280 on the Su-85. So that's actually pretty good at Tier 5. Pretty decent view range. So what do we got here? We have a faster firing, lower pen in terms of the standard round, but much higher DPM. A bit slower with no armor, but some of that stuff can be solved in addition to a slightly more derpy gun. But if you can get the rounds down range, pretty good. So speaking of that, I ran vents to help everything. I have a GLD and I have a turbo. I don't know if it can carry an IA. You could put an IA on this and drop its dispersion down. That would give me a 0.36 right there. So that is a possibility. I liked the turbo, but I gave up on that gives up things like maybe running a camo net, although that particular meta in the game is pretty well gone. I don't know if I'd recommend that. It is possible at tier 5 you could chuck on some binoculars to give yourself a nice little extra view range. Down at low tier, it already has 350, so those would help out quite a bit for a little self-spotting. But realize that the derpy nature of the gun is going to hurt you a little bit and then make that a little bit more difficult in terms of long-range shots. Taking a quick look at the ammunition, 127 as noted earlier on the armor piercing, and 175, which is decent for the high explosive. Remember, this thing will see tier 7s on occasion, so a little heat in there is going to help out. Pretty decent pen actually for the high explosive at 70. There's a considerable number of tanks down in those lower tiers that have less than that, so you could do some decent damage there, although it's only running up to 175, so it's not a holy cow great big change right there. I had a pretty good crew. I've moved them on to the tier 6 as I have finished this. Let's take a quick look at the research thing. I had the whole Italian line researched when I came into this the first time. I actually had the engine and the radio unlocked, so they are shared with something else on the Italian line. I looked around, I couldn't find it, and I gave up because I didn't care. It's not that I don't care about you guys, but anyway, I probably spent more time talking about it right here than I did actually looking for it. That being said, I did grind out the tracks, which were 2,000, as you can see there. And then there's 2 guns you've got to go through, and really there is no other choice unless you're going to free experience through this. You need 3,200 for this gun, and then the top gun you need 3,400, and then on to the Bassotto, which was 28. I don't remember if it's on here. I want to say it was about 28,500, something like that, which seemed like quite a grind to get to tier 6, but it didn't bother me too much. Let's take a look at my stats in this bad boy. Where is this thing? Here we go. I actually did pretty well, but so low sample size at 18 battles, and shout out to my platoon mates Pilgrim and Zemke and Dioblu who helped me out with all of that stuff. We played a couple sessions in there. 78% win rate, 588 XP. We averaged 664 damage. You can see that the hits were pretty low. Look at that, 49%. That thing, I just fired with it. In fact, there were a couple games in there where I was knocking stuff down quite a bit as we're working as a team, knocking buildings down and such. So some of that is due to just knocking stuff down, and there was also a couple that were just a bunch of blind firing because it was quite campy on several of the games. So I would expect that to come up quite a bit. Don't take too much from that. More like a 65-70, I would say. 2.33 damage. You can see all these numbers doing really well. Armor use efficiency is horrible because it simply really does not have much armor on it. I had the best game I had. I think I'm going to show you that one. 1,437 damage and 3 kills. It is certainly capable of a lot more than that. You get in the right situation and you can start pumping the rounds down range. But you know, it's kind of one of those interesting things with a tank like this that, yes, it has a high DPM, but it's countered by kind of poor penetration and a bit of a derpy gun. So it's hard sometimes to apply that DPM, a little bit of a balancing thing that wargaming typically does. Just really quickly, we'll take a look at the armor. And the reason it's going to be really quickly because that's it. It's just 50, man. And 30 on the lower hull. And it doesn't have a gun mantlet. All right, so going hull down, although it does have -8, going hull down and thinking your, superstructure, powerful armor on the top is going to save you, that's just not happening. All right, so again, weird, lots of firepower, kind of hard to put it down range in terms of its derpiness, and no real armor to do the face punching close in DPM game. But still, I kind of liked it just because that fast firing gun was quite effective when it was working. Let's take a quick look at a game. All right, we join this battle in progress. Oh, derp. Fairly quick to zoom in, but very, very inaccurate overall. That Luke's just sort of loses his mind, goes in there. He's going to die pretty quickly. Trying to get... What's going on, man? More professionalism on display, my friends. More professionalism. All right, so this is a game where I took a lot of shots like this because I figured there'd be somebody sitting there. It has a decent amount of ammo, but it is not unlimited. You can see I'm carrying what was 38 or 40 or so AP, 12 heat rounds, and 13 HE rounds. I probably don't need that many HE rounds, but I just started playing the tank, so I wanted to have enough of each round to figure out what might work and what might not work. As I said, fairly campy situation. 1/3 of the team really is sitting by cap, waiting for somebody to show up to shoot. You're going to have a hard time making those kind of pixel snipe shots right there with this. You can see how big the dispersion circle is at this range. So I'm just kind of shooting here. I actually did hit that guy. There's going to end up being, I think, a stug. Yes, the stug, I believe, is in that bush, if this is the game I remember. So there's 3 of us camping back here. So I decide, whatever, let's just move forward. They are sort of stuffed into the back there. You can use this low ground to approach without getting shredded, as long as they don't have the donut or the left side or the high ground off to my left there. I am concerned about the stug because of his position in that bush. The P2640 is pretty much swept by fire. So we'll just sneak around here and we'll start working on this guy. Go ahead and hit the heat so we can go through the turret of this thing. Kind of a couple lucky shots. But you can see how big that dispersion circle is. I am actually hitting them. I think that's 3 in a row or so. I may miss one here somewhere. Nope. For whatever reason, those shots have decided to go right where I'm aiming. Look at that, just exactly centered. The poor guy just getting his his mantlet is getting shredded by the heat. Holy cow! Make a mistake here. I'm still loaded with the heat. Probably could have gone to the AP. I'm worried about the stug or whatever might be in that bush. Right now, I don't know that he's there. Of course, I do at this point because the game is over and I've already played this game, but I figured more than likely there has to be. Look at the number of TDs. I mean, certainly somebody's in that bush. I'm about to find this out too. Very surprised he hasn't seen me. There he is. Now I've spotted him. And I fire, and this is where he spots me. So there's that terrible view range on these guys. Crazy, huh? Now watch, I'm actually going to bounce. Oh, I actually missed the stug. And he's tearing me up pretty good. I think he might even get another hit. Yep, see there's a bounce. He was angled as he was backing out. So he really gets away with that. And then I stupidly fire both my last 2 gold/heat/special rounds into the stupid bush. So big mistake right there. Unfortunately, the P2640 has died right where I want to be to try to come up into that bush and get some shots on these guys. Trying to find what's going on with this stug. We're looking pretty good overall. Pretty typical gameplay I found with the Semovente. Yeah, you can sit in the back, but once your team starts moving forward, you got to get up forward. That's why I liked the turbo. It let me get up there and kind of keep up with these guys. Or if you're going to make a move like this where you want to cross some open ground and get into this low ground, it's nice to be a little faster than 35. I'm trying to move this thing, but reference the power to weight, my friends. This thing is not going to be able to push other tanks very well, and it was going to take me forever to figure that out. But I sort of shoulder him a little bit aside so I can get up here into there and take him out. Did give me a lit. I figured it would. That's why the immediate back out of that. Kind of goofing around here. There's no arty, so that's fairly reflexive, rocking back and forth. But you know, sometimes people have a pixel and you don't realize it, right? Maybe they're on the high ground and they can just pick out the top of your tank and a little bit of movement. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not like I'm wasting gas or anything like that. There we go. We get this guy hit. I'm going to try to track him again. Unfortunately, it doesn't track him again, but it does hit him again. So we hit him a few times as he starts to back out. We're at 876 damage. Here comes the other Semovente gang all pushing in together there. Really, that stug has kind of got us locked down, and I can't afford too many more hits. I'm about 2 more shots from him taking me out of the game. There he is. He's lit again. There, we've got one on him. Oh, you know, every time he angles, that AP with that relatively low penetration struggles to get in there. And he just keeps coming around the corner. Actually, he's shooting the other way, I believe, now. So I think my buddies are going to take care of him. We're at 989. come around this way. Down goes the Stug, so that's opened up this side just a little bit. I know there's at least one camping up there, and I think he actually ends up killing me. That guy sees me. I thump him. He tries to get away. Doesn't have enough armor even for this relatively low pen of this gun. I get hit by the guy that's up there. And I think actually, there you go. Now I die. Okay. I end up dying there. Pretty much a romple stomp, but I found that to be fairly typical gameplay for this tank. You can obviously hang out in the back and do the Camp-A-Llama Ding-Dang thing, but I highly recommend the turbo on it just to keep up if your team does start to win. You can always camp, but being able to rush forward and get some more hit points is something that you need a little speed to do most of the time. You get left behind otherwise. It's up to you, however you want to roll with it. It could be, based on its decent camo, it could be a fairly effective camo sniper guy minus the derpy gun. You saw, you know, large dispersion circle, but it fired so fast, so many rounds going down range. I mean, really, if you can get the gun working, I'm kind of beating that dead horse. If you can get the gun working on it, it can be a pretty brutal little tank at tier 5. It's just, it was tricky on occasion for me to get the gun working and hitting and doing what I needed to do. Add on to that the uncomfortableness in general of a casemate TD. You know, sometimes getting those into position and getting shots is not easy, especially if you want to play aggressively. Then there you go. It's one of the reasons why I don't particularly care for a lot of the casemate TDs. Certainly over mediums and heavies, they're just more flexible. But this one surprised me. I'm going to say that. Let's wrap this up. So it's the final verdict on the Semovente M41, a tank that actually fought in World War II, although not necessarily in its top configuration in the game. I was pleasantly surprised. I haven't played Tier 5 for a long time, certainly not 18 games of it in a short period of time. I was doing Tier 5 as part of my 100 Battle Challenge, but I carved them out because it wasn't as interesting, and it frankly added a lot more tanks. But it was kind of reinvigorating for the lower tiers for me. I did enjoy it. There was a couple other negative things about it, though. Obviously, it was covered up with Semoventes. Some games had 5 to 10 of the daggum things. Clearly, it's a new line, so everybody wants to play it. So that colored a little bit. A lot of casemate TDs kind of slowly moving around the map. Give it 2 or 3 months at Tier 5. Where will this thing be? I don't think it's going to be a super popular TD, but it is certainly capable and competent. And like I said, it surprised me in terms of it just had rounds ready for you when you were ready to shoot. There's pew, 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 gun shots going down range, which is a little bit unusual for TDs other than things maybe like a T-67. It was kind of that way, and of course it doesn't have the maneuverability and it doesn't have the turret that a T-67 did, but in terms of its rounds just heading down range, it really did kick out some pain on occasion there. So I did enjoy that, pleasantly surprised by the Semovente. It is certainly a competent TD at Tier 5. And that's it. I think competent is the word today, with maybe slightly above competent. I'm going to rate it slightly above competent, kind of fun, but not really my bag, baby. All right, that's the ranking. That's the ranking. You know, I've come up with multiple rankings over the years, and I've never stuck with any of them. So we'll just continue to make up a new ranking system every time I do a review. Thanks for coming by. I hope you guys have a fantastic day and the rest of your week. If you're going to grind through the Semovente, the grind was actually fairly easy. I didn't mention that earlier. The lower tier guns, I mean, they're standard act with stock guns, but I could still make them work, and you got through them quickly. And really, if you don't want to play it, there's not very many free experience required to get by it. I would recommend playing it. There is actually one last thing I want to mention. I probably should have done at the beginning. This particular tank plays nothing like the follow-on tanks will play. The Tier 6 that I'm in right now is a lot like this one, but at Tier 7 we start talking about the autoloader and the heavy armor and all that stuff. That is not this tank. Completely different idea for the 5 and the 6. Casemates with no turret and not a lot of armor. And pew-pew guns. It's going to move into harder hitting guns, lots of armor, half turrets kind of stuff. More like assault heavy. So there you go, just in case you're wondering. That is all I've got. Thanks for tuning in. We will see ya.